Hi, everyone. This is Mary Clark, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer from Brivo, and I am really glad you all are joining me today. We're going to be talking about Brivo's annual trends in security, and I think this is one of the best and more interesting level or set of results that we've had. We've been doing this for 5 years now, and this is, I think, getting as close to as possible as we can to, what does it mean to be a consumer in today's security world, and in particular, physical security. So as I get rolling through this, I'll be telling you about some of those results. But, one of the most important things that's changing in our entire demographic world is that by 2025, which I still can't get over, the world will have 64% of its workforce will be either millennials or Gen Z, which means that we're dealing with primarily digital natives that have used a mobile device or some other digital device as their key means of interacting with the wider world. So as we get into this and we start talking about the results, I want you to keep that in mind because it's actually shaping significantly what we found. So this is the survey that we did. This is the information that's present. We ended up having about 677 security experts, and you can see here the geographic dispersion of that. And so while certainly it's very heavy North America, there is a really pretty good representation globally as well, which I was really thrilled to see. But then also in that middle column, you can see the titles here and the world that these individual respondents live in. And so therefore, as you think about each of these trends, you can have this as a reference point to help understand how are they thinking about this? Because this is, we need to start thinking collectively about that end user. So first up, the user experience and convenience, it's driving the direction for everything. It's adopting and making us adopt changes in the way in which physical security is handled entirely. Cloud-based access control with mobile and biometrics is moving much more mainstream into what I would describe as more general enterprise environments, and we'll talk more about that. Data collection and systems integration. So data collection and then other tools that need to be integrated are no longer nice to have, particularly the use of data, which is critical for driving and managing the business. Cloud adoption and the security centralization, it's accelerating. We're seeing a significant move globally from on-premises to cloud-based. And then finally, those of you that may be security integrators that are working on the front lines, implementing and installing and working with architects and engineers and building owners and owner-operators, this is a critical set of information for you to be looking at, and we'll get in more into how that's affecting the security integrator. So let's start with the first one. 84% of the respondents surveyed value access control, the user experience. It's significantly important. When we were doing this, a couple of years ago when we did this, obviously, it was all about being in the office and having the interaction with each other and putting ourselves in a position to where, the idea of badging in was it was nothing, there was not this thought process. But now, 2 years later, post-pandemic, and the world is free and moving about again, we're seeing that we've got to have digital solutions that we have to be able to adopt to the world of what is the expectation. And this is the expectation. I mean, come on, all of us remember George Jetson. At least I do. I will reveal my age a little bit in saying that this is what we have, right? And even further, we believe even stronger that, it's also this, right? It's not just what's happening from George's perspective, but it's also Picard here. We have this expectation of what is it like to go into a building. But it's not necessarily an optimal experience for a lot of us. And I think, it has in the past looked a little bit more how can I say, foreboding, if you will. So as a part of looking at the way in which we need to prepare ourselves in the future for access control, the facial recognition, phones to unlock the door, those are prevalent. They're the most easiest and convenient means. Now, will there be differences across geography based on privacy as it relates to the facial recognition? Absolutely. But I think that as we go forward, it's the ease of access, the frictionless, seamless ability to enter into any structure that is going to be the driver. The second trend, cloud-based access control with mobile and biometrics, is moving mainstream. So I'm going to continuously say mobile. Today, we have at Brivo 2 million mobile credentials being actively used by our end user customers today. So that means they are taking their mobile device and they are utilizing it to enter any structure or an internal office or an apartment building or whatever the case may be. This is something that has got to happen, and you'll see here, 71%, say that their organizations are going to adopt mobile, and we're going to see it look like this today. In fact, we're definitely talking to the primary folks in the near field communications activity today. Brivo has announced that we're working with Apple for NFC. You'll see a Brivo Pass in here, and that's going to be what it needs to be like. So the days of it simply being the fob are behind us. So what are more convenient users? So you see the mobile authentication here with multi-factor. It's more secure than cards. It's less expensive than physical credentials. So here you see that side of it's not just easier for the users, but it's also easier for those that are managing access. The other interesting activity associated with this that I mentioned briefly is the biometrics component to this. We know that as those opportunities for biometrics to become more relevant in today's physical security and access control environment, there will be choices to make as to how this is incorporated. Having some sort of multi-factor or two-factor authentication component to this, I think, is going to help drive that ease and operational effectiveness. It's just how quickly is it happening? But it's not just for those mission critical, very high security environments any longer. So as we think about the future, 60% of the respondents, say in 2023, are considering adding biometrics to their budget in the next 3 years. So this is material as we consider the challenges associated with managing employee privacy and managing our residents and our tenants and our renters and anyone that needs to access a building. The utilization of biometrics does provide an absolutely easier and more frictionless opportunity to achieve entry and to achieve so with the optimal amount of safety. And so as this proceeds, we need to keep this in mind. It's not just going to be for those highly, highly secure environments. This particular one, data collection, this idea that we have to have the integration of different systems that are cross-functional. So identity access management has long been a tool that has been utilized and incorporated into any of these tools itself. But when you think about the systems integrations for modernizing these opportunities, I mean, it's video is absolutely critical. So when you start prioritizing the different types of data that can be collected, the different types of events that can be categorized and curated for an operational security person or organization or department, this is part of what we have to be really ensuring is delivered in any of these solutions that are out there. We know at Brivo very much that there's so much data that's being delivered in just purely access control. When you start to think about all of the solutions that need to be integrated into an access control environment and any physical security, this gets to be a big amount of data. We had a manager from a global security operations center say, in my career, I've never delivered more data to an organization than I do today. and that's for security. I think when we start thinking about what does that mean? People, things, places, video, events. If you just sit here and look at these are not all being delivered by one system. They are being delivered by multiple solutions that need to be integrated into an environment that provides the operating environment, the safety and security of that environment, the cost effectiveness associated with that. All of these things that are being shown on the screen right now contribute to a security operations environment that is critical to providing the most value. So yes, certainly the majority of these items are related to what I would describe as an enterprise. But put yourself into a multifamily environment, and you think about elevators, and you think about base buildings, and you think about the amount of interaction that needs to happen going from where someone gathers packages to where they might go to the gym, and the kind of security and ease of access that needs to be provided there, and the level of security that needs to be provided. You flip that over to an environment that has dark delivery and the video surveillance that needs to be provided, and how are those interactions with those third parties making dark deliveries to any, let's think of a quick service restaurant, those opportunities to capture those events, deliver that information back to a security operations center, or some ability to alert, all have to be captured and made usable and made curated to such a way that they are, and I hate this word, actionable. So it has to be integrated. Right here you have a list of what was prioritized in terms of types of integration from other data sources that the survey provided. Identity and access management was right at the top, and we'll see some of those here in a second. Video surveillance right behind it. Biometrics, alarm solutions. You can see, just the beginning of energy system here. I think if we had had a greater, perhaps, representation from outside of the United States, or generally more around the world, we might have seen that be a little bit higher, given some of the progressive actions associated with ESG. But smart locks, license plate recognition, we're testing that right now as a means of going in and out without having to get out a key fob and flash it at the gate and have the gate open. Again, all captured by, very often video surveillance. The additional need for the SaaS-related services. So here you see, let's call it the world of a potential identity and enterprise identity management solutions. This is incredibly inefficient to try to manage. And when you think about some of the risks associated with enterprise identity, inefficiency, this drives greater security threats, right? You're dealing with a much larger threat surface when you start thinking about going outside of cybersecurity, and you start thinking of the physical security, which is very much happening today. The convergence of this is occurring. The compliance violations that need to occur, and how are those being managed? The reduced productivity, the amount of time that's being spent by an IT department, by a CIO, trying to figure out which of these tools needs to be integrated into a centralized security operations environment. All of this is affecting the way in which security for an enterprise is being efficient or inefficient. So the costs in all of this to mitigate any of that and that increased escalation associated with that, you've got to have an approach that says, how are we prioritizing those systems? How are they integrating across the board from each of our control points that we're managing? And that's going much beyond just the cybersecurity component to this. So it is managing a regular identity audit, enforcing strong access controls, and ensuring that there is the compliance and the optimal working operations that could occur. But you can see, this is a complicated environment that's out there. Trend 4, cloud adoption. Certainly, it's no surprise, Brivo was the first to be a cloud-based access control company. And so for us, this is something that a great many of the organizations out there in the world are still catching up on. And this is a fundamental action, we believe, in order to ensure that there is that optimal ability to manage security. If convenience is number one to the end user, what does that need to look like in terms of managing it from the other side? I've realized I've just gone ahead one, but I'll go back. We need to have the cloud adoption be right at the top of this list. When you consider the fact that in this survey, 66% said that cloud-based access control improves overall security. That's up from 57 in 2022. We're a little surprised that it's not higher than that, given the proliferation of so many digital components associated with providing good access control and security. Having a single centralized place to manage that as opposed to an on-premises solution, this is definitely a change of the guard. And it actually does fit tremendously right into this next trend, which is a great many of the security integrators out there are perceived as not really being as aware as they could be. 60% considers the security integrators that are out there, that are on the front lines, that are doing the installations, that are working with the building owner operators, are only somewhat knowledgeable. 13% dismiss them as not knowledgeable. So if we're moving the world forward and we're trying to ensure that the best possible physical security is being delivered on behalf of any of the end user customers, regardless of the type, right? We're talking about any type of structure here that has a perimeter that needs to be protected. The security integrator is not currently being considered by the buyer as the one with the greatest source of information. The opportunity that we face in changing that is really relevant. We've got to put ourselves in a position in the industry to where those end users are looking to the security integrator as the source of this. The entire world, as it moves more towards a biometric solution that is being made up of more and more of the Millennial and Gen Z, as our earlier slides portrayed, that expectation of having an expert, if you will, from those that are implementing and acting as our resources in driving any new solution that is acting as our source of safety is critical. So this has got to change. I think the biggest message here is not getting left behind. This is a really sobering conclusion. This last one, I know I need them, integrators, to install and perform the service. But I do all my own research. I'm typically telling my guy what he needs to go research to support me. So this was sobering. And I think that as we sum up and we get to the final conclusions here, the end user experience is at the top of the list. It's got to be digital. It potentially needs to include biometrics. And in order to really efficiently do that, it's got to be cloud-based and centralized. And it must be incorporating and integrating those solutions that deliver the data effectively and efficiently to the operating organization responsible for security. But in the end, right now, the integrator themselves needs to change the way in which they are approaching this market and need to be ahead of this curve in terms of where are these trends and where are they going. And being centralized and cloud-based is no longer just a nice to have, nor is just data a nice to have. Sobering stuff. We at Brivo are really very thankful for our amazing and vast customer base and our integration relationships that we have there, both with our security integrator partners as well as our technology partners, as we deliver solutions to in over 60 countries worldwide and over 350 million square feet around the world. And as we go forward and traversing this incredibly challenging and world out there today. It's making sure that we keep that end user right in our viewfinder, and that is really what's driving us. So with that, I'll close it up here, and we can get into Q&A. But again, thank you so much for spending time with me today, and taking the time to learn about our survey of security trends for 2023.
Hi, Mary. It's great to have Brivo involved in Security by Alive. And the trend report you discussed has clearly presented some really interesting results. I just wanted to delve a little bit further into our Q&A, if I may.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, happy to.
So you mentioned user experience pioneering the changes in the majority of this type of technology. Could you clarify a little further as to why this is the case? And is it just because of the perception that you spoke about of security from a user perspective or the public's perspective?
I think it has so much to do with everything has become so consumerized, right? Everything, when you think about your own individual life and your opportunity to interact with almost anything, it needs to be so easy. I think that's really the word. We talk about convenience and user experience, but really it's how is it easy? How do I make it easier? And so that I don't have friction. And so my lovely George Jetson example and our Picard example I think are really representations of what that expectation is really. So hassle and anything that has a complex or challenging user interface or user experience or journey is just not welcome, I think, is really the way to think about it. So I think security is being challenged, like almost any industry, to simply be easier to work with and have as a part of our lives. I really think that's really the driver. Consumerization, I think, is really the driver.
I feel like I'm definitely a bit of a cynic in this respect. I mean, my wife is very much is the person to tap on everything with her mobile to pay for everything. And I'm like, no, I must carry my card. She's like, oh, I haven't even been able to find my bank card for 6 months. So
exactly.
It's crazy to see that change.
So thank you. That's a perfect example.
And also you spoke about multi-factor authentication, and this has seen a huge uplift in use. Do you think this trend has accelerated because of our shift to, a hybrid working format, and that remote work has become more of a popularity in the workplace?
Oh, yeah, because when you think about the best thing about a multi-factor authentication process is that it helps to rein in the risk, right? We're always talking about how is risk being managed. And so if all of a sudden I have critical data in a laptop that's hanging out in somebody's house, how do I ensure when that surface of attack has gotten so much bigger and there's so little control with so many critical devices just roaming around, as a security officer, somebody in that position has got to be thinking about what are those means that I can use to constantly safeguard that data and reduce that risk. And so multi-factor authentication, I think, is simply going to continue to grow. And that actually is a little counterproductive to what we just talked about in terms of user experience. But, it's just going to be on the rise. There's no other way to do it.
And speaking of mobile credentials, are there any additional risks to this? I mean, having all of our credentials, data, banking, everything all under one device just seems to me, a little bit crazy. You've got examples of theft.
Yeah. But part of the benefit, right, is that if all of a sudden I lose my device, right, if my device just, I lose it, through notification, that multi-factor authentication solution can, I love the very technical term, can zap that phone and erase anything, that is critical, that is considered private and confidential. And therefore, there is the ability to, again, manage that risk. So the device itself, again, you've always got to be conscious of, all right, what tools am I allowing to be utilized on any portable device, right, that's not inside of my office building, and how am I making sure that portable device is capable of being zapped, for lack of a better word, which I've always appreciated very technical term, so that it can be erased and subsequently that risk is managed. So that's got to be a part of that constant operational thought process.
Mm.
Yeah, for sure.
And I suppose MFA is continuing to evolve to not just be a code or a text now. It's, it's like you said, the introduction of biometrics, your thumbprint, your facial recognition, all of that as well. And speaking on the biometric side of things, you said that 60% of respondents are considering putting biometrics into their buildings. And this is quite a staggering result, although not probably as much as we expected, but still a very high number, especially as biometrics, more so the newer side of technologies, still very much in their infancy stage. So where do you see the future of this going?
I think this is going to be really geographic dependent, right? I think that as I, have grown up and as GDPR has become something that we now live with every day, and the ability for personal data to be so managed, you flip that over and say, okay, I'm going to start gathering biometric related data that is going to help verify you into any system or any structure. It's going to have its, I think it's going to have its challenges for adoption. What to me is the most interesting is the fact that it's in such a mindset that they're looking at this as an opportunity over the next couple of years to implement. Will it start with, the easiest way to think about this is if I'm going to do facial recognition, chances are you already have a corporate badge that has a picture of you on it. Do they just do facial recognition based on that picture? Yeah. That may be just the easiest way to do this. And I think that may be the beginning. And so it's going to be I think, an incremental path towards what ultimately will be our end result. So I'm fascinated to see where we are in, say, 5 years on this. I really am. I think it's going to be the real telltale.
Mm. And I think actually what you just said there is actually an incredibly interesting point that, that there's a lot of discussion around, the bias of facial recognition, the bias of these kind of AI based technologies. But if you have an organization that says, say has 500 employees and each of those 500 already has their image uploaded, that's what you can feed into the algorithm to stop it actually, being bias to the people that are already employed. So actually that negates a lot of the ethics and concerns around that technology.
Yeah, it's a little comforting, I think, as an employee. It's just like, okay, you're not capturing my face on, it's not like the same facial capture like on your phone, to do facial recognition that way. But, how much can you cheat that? How much can it be? It's that risk balance. And so that'll be the challenge. So that's why I think it's going to be some baby steps for a while, but the prevalence is so material, I think, is huge.
And you also spoke a lot about integration, but does this also include like true interoperability as well?
The best thing that I think any security solutions provider can do is ensure that there is an open API that can both, that can absolutely send data, whatever that data is that's being captured. In our case, it's certainly events are being captured, and have the ability to take that and be a part of another solution. Today, we integrate with hundreds of different partners where our data is being incorporated into everything from video surveillance to other types of security solutions, without going into a huge amount of detail. Same thing for us, our ability to ingest data to enrich our own platform so that we have information that can be a part of an overall security view, right? And so I think it's imperative. The idea of a walled garden anymore is just, to me, too old-fashioned. I've been in technology for too many years. It's more worthwhile to be ready to integrate and have an open environment to deliver value, right? The buyer's got to see the value. So it's just not worthwhile doing anything else, I think.
Unfortunately, this is actually all we have time for today. So I'm sorry to cut us off a little bit short, but thank you so much, Mary, for joining us. I really appreciate your time, and your insight has been invaluable. If anyone has any further questions, obviously, please reach out to Mary on the platform directly, and you can discover more about the trends that the security industry is currently facing. Thank you.
Thank you.